I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that one of the most mundane but perplexing challenges of lockdown life for long stretches of the pandemic was figuring out how to get your hair cut. In saying this, I don't in any way mean to make light of the serious circumstances that we faced or to diminish the very real ordeals that taxed our frontline workers to their understandable limits. But each of us, blessed with hair, found in time that whether we liked it or not, it became a thing that we had to contend with. While so much else around us seemed to freeze in place, that did not extend to our ever-extending hair. Amid the existential uncertainty of that time, our follicles continued to pump out hair at the rapid pace of a centimeter or two a month. At some point, most of us decided something simply had to be done. For some, that meant taking scissors in hand and, well, taking your chances. Others may have pressed into service one of their nearest and dearest to take up the task. That's what happened at our house. Early on, Bob and I made a pact. We would cut each other's hair. As it turns out, this was not among our wedding vows. For richer and for poorer, in sickness and in health, in good hair and in bad. It was an exercise in trust and a test for our relationship, as it was, I imagine, for many. To hone his skills, Bob Ever, the engineer, watched a YouTube video about cutting hair and then felt confident that he had gotten the gist of it. I, on the other hand, assured him that I had carefully watched my barber work his magic on my hair every 3 weeks for years on end, and that surely qualified me to work some magic of my own. So out came the scissors and the razors, and every 3 weeks we fumbled our way through this regular chore. It was something of a bonding experience. And did I mention it was an exercise in trust? Still, we tried to approach the ritual with humor and goodwill. But occasionally, when one of us slipped up and nicked the other's ears with the scissors or accidentally shaved off a sideburn, one or both of us would immediately launch into that earworm of a song from the musical Grease, Beauty School Dropout. Clearly, if we hadn't missed our midterms and flunked shampoo, we would have been better equipped to meet the challenge quite literally at hand. That song has returned to me in recent days as I thought about the meaning of beauty, our theme for the month of May. How many of us, I wonder, have at some point dropped out of beauty school? A few years ago, during the morning rush hour, a youngish man wearing blue jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap strode into a subway station in the heart of Washington, D.C. He positioned himself just inside a set of double doors near the escalator that led down to the trains. He opened up his violin case, took out his treasured instrument, seated the open case with a bit of spare change, and then began to play Johann Sebastian Bach's glorious Chaconne. But no one really noticed or even seemed to care. Commuters on their way to work filed past in droves, all seemingly oblivious to the fact that this guy might have any talent. Of the 1,100 people captured on video walking past him over the next 45 minutes, only 7 people paused long enough to listen to him play at all. And only once was there more than a crowd of one nearby. Still, even in their haste, a few people had been generous, and by the time he finished, he had made $42 and some change. It seems that context is everything sometimes. On that Friday morning, no one knew it, but the fiddler standing against a bare wall was one of the finest classical musicians in the world, playing some of the most elegant music ever written on one of the most valuable violins ever made. What most everyone passing by had missed was the virtuoso Joshua Bell, with his prized Stradivarius in hand, masterfully rendering music that would have brought down the house in any of the world's great concert halls. His performance had been arranged by the Washington Post, as an experiment in context, perception, priorities, a test to see whether, amid the hubbub of our daily lives, beauty could possibly compete. I hope it could have competed in me. I hope I would have stopped and listened and tried to appreciate the gift this guy was offering me, regardless of whether I recognize him as one of the world's greatest musicians. But most of all, I hope I would have decided to invest just a few minutes of my day to be reminded that life is good, that beauty abounds, and that it merits all of the reverence and awe that I can muster. But chances are that I, too, might very well have shuffled right along like so many of the others, oblivious to the gift of beauty on offer, just there for the taking. In other words, I, like so many of the people who rushed off to work that morning without giving the music any heed, could have just as easily been another beauty school dropout. What about you? It's been said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's true. Different people find different things beautiful. But what if we're not exactly doing a lot of beholding? What if life goes by in a blur and we rarely make an effort to note all of the beauty that is on offer all around us? The nature of beauty is a long-standing question in the field of philosophy. In antiquity, beauty was considered one of the highest values, up there with goodness, justice, and truth. In our time, the debate more often centers on the question of whether beauty exists in its own right, or if it's generated by the beholder's sense of it. While I appreciate that some find it meaningful to debate the ins and outs of aesthetics, I find that I am more concerned about whether we take the time to summon the intention to be on the lookout for beauty wherever and however it may be found. When we are mired in the hard and heartbreaking aspects of this world, beauty may be hard to come by. I understand that. But I also believe that beauty is not a binary thing, an either or, abundantly present or plainly absent. Beauty is weaved through the fabric of the world, so often there for the taking, which means that beauty can be found in some surprising places. And I'm not just talking about things that are pretty or pleasing. I am talking about what we recognize to be beautiful because of how it moves us and connects us deeply to life itself. The French existentialist philosopher Albert Camus said that beauty is unbearable, that it drives us to despair, offering us for a minute the glimpse of an eternity that we should like to stretch out over the whole of time. To me, such a sense of beauty speaks to a deep feeling of goodness, of rightness, about what we bear witness to in a given moment. Another violin story. This one from right here in Toronto. A few years ago, Jim Wallenberg, a longtime member of the Toronto Symphony, left his valuable violin on top of a green plastic salt bin just outside the streetcar station at Queens Quay in Spadina. As he fumbled through his pockets for a subway token and juggled the takeout food that he was intent on delivering to his wife at Mount Sinai Hospital, where she was soon to give birth to their twins, he put down his cherished violin. And when the streetcar arrived, distracted by all that was on his mind, off he went, leaving behind the prized instrument he had cherished for years, a violin he had named the Lady Wallenberg, in honor of his mother, who had taught him to play and who had had the violin made for him 36 years before. As the streetcar rocked along the tracks, he made it all the way to Union Station before realizing what he had done. When he did come to, he quite understandably panicked. He said he was paralyzed, freaking out, and shaking inside. But with some quick thinking, he decided to stay on the streetcar as it looped back around towards Queens Quay, hoping and praying that his violin would still be there when he returned. But of course, it was long gone. Not knowing what else to do, he posted notices in the newspaper offering a $1,000 reward for the safe return of the prized instrument that was, to him, like a beloved member of the family. Just a few days later, a man named Wayne remembered that earlier in the week, he had been struck by the sight of a violin case in a shopping cart being pushed along by a homeless woman near to where Wallenberg's violin had been lost. That man set out in search for the woman and her cart, and when he found her, he offered her the $35 he had in his wallet, and when she took a shine to it, he threw in the silver ring that he was wearing to sweeten the deal. With what he hoped was the right violin now in hand, he called Wallenberg and made plans to exchange the violin for the $1,000 reward. At the end of the day, the violinist had his instrument, the man had his reward and had promptly booked himself a flight to Vegas, and the woman had $35 and a not-so-very-new ring. When the story hit the press, there was much debate about the ethical implications of how all of this shook out, with many people feeling the woman deserved much more than she got, or that she should have just delivered the violin to the TTC after she found it. If this were a sermon on justice, I would certainly delve into all of that further, but this is and remains a sermon about beauty. So I will leave it to you to decide if justice was served, and invite you instead to consider what was beautiful in this story. For me, it wasn't so much that musician and instrument were reunited and that they will live happily ever after. For me, it was more that the woman who found the violin had treated it well, and arguably better than the world had treated her. And for me, it was that there was so much upset and outrage in the comment section of the story that ran in the Toronto Star. People feeling that this woman had been slighted, people wondering just what her life was like, and people taking great offense at the Star for denying her inherent worth and dignity by repeatedly referring to her only as the bag lady. In all of that, I found great beauty and a ray of hope. Beauty abounds in life's most common places, and even in those corners that may sometimes make us uncomfortable. It's always there for the taking in predictable and in unexpected ways, if only we will open ourselves to it. Yet too often we don't, and too many of life's gifts are left unopened. Let us learn to live in another way. Let us learn to pay careful attention, sacred attention to our lives, that we might never lose sight of the beauty that makes so much of life worth living. For as Annie Dillard reminds us, we are here to abet creation and to witness to it, so that creation need not play to an empty house. Friends, for the miracle that is ours with every day, it seems the least we can do to repay our great debt of gratitude for life itself is to pay attention to life as we live it. So let us study hard in this great and wondrous beauty school in which we live and move and have our being. That our hearts may be glad and grateful for all that is beautiful in this life that we live. So be it.